Welcome to The Business Strategist, the show for CEOs and founders ready to scale fast, lead smarter, and build a business that doesn't rely on them. I'm Adam Strong, award-winning strategist, former elite athlete, international speaker, and 3 times best-selling author. After 3 decades in business, I know exactly what it takes to grow, scale, and exit with impact. Each week, I dive into real conversations with industry experts, bold entrepreneurs, and clients navigating the uphill struggles of business, giving you the tools and the strategies to create more profit, more freedom, and more impact. Let's get into it.
When the holidays start to feel a bit repetitive, reach for a Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry and put your twist on tradition. A bold cranberry and winter spice flavor fusion, Sprite Winter Spiced Cranberry is a refreshing way to shake things up this sipping season. And only for a limited time. Sprite. Obey your thirst.
Here's what nobody tells you about selling your business. The deal closes, the celebration dinner ends, the adrenaline fades away, and then suddenly you wake up the next morning and have absolutely no idea who you are anymore. The company you built has now gone. The title is completely irrelevant. The identity you wore like a second skin for the past decade is completely stripped away. And then suddenly you're standing in front of the mirror wondering if you've actually made the biggest mistake of your life. Now, today's guest didn't just survive 3 multi-billion-dollar acquisitions, but she has witnessed firsthand of what leaders aren't equipped for the uncertainty around exiting a business. She wrote a best-selling book called Now What? A Survivor's Guide, Thriving Through Mergers and Acquisitions, which basically serves as a playbook for executive and leaders with regards to post-exit deal. She's a TEDx speaker. She's been featured in multiple media outlets around the world. This is going to be an amazing episode. I can already feel it. So without further ado, Jennifer Fondrevay, welcome to the show.
That's a lot of buildup. I better not fail. In the fact that you highlight, I've been on multiple media outlets, but I haven't yet been on The Business Strategist. So this, I think I've hit the zenith with this.
That's true. That's true. And this is, by the way, this is like the most important interview ever today. I just want to highlight that,
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway,
it's great to connect with you. First of all, I wanted to give a big shout out to our mutual friend, Morag Barat, of course, who introduced us. She's a wonderful lady, isn't she?
She is. She is a phenomenal lady. I'll use the word phenomenal, and I don't throw that around lightly.
No, absolutely. And you know, it's really interesting. I mean, your story is fascinating first off the bat. And
thank you.
No, but it is. And you know, I've done a lot of extensive research in your background and things like that. And I think what's really interesting about your background is that it's so relatable in the story that you have already lived that some of our listeners are probably about to embark upon. So I just wanted to kind of, again, highlight that.
Thank you. Well, the fact that you researched me in depth and yet still invited me to come on is a good sign.
Well, but I know we're going to have an absolute laugh. Now, for you guys that are listening in, by the way, I just want to, again, I kind of remind everybody, it doesn't matter if you're listening to this in the gym, in the car, even if you're in the office with your team right now, what Jennifer is about to give you guys is an absolute masterclass when it comes to the emotional and mental preparation part. We're going to be talking about some key topics around mergers and acquisitions. But rather than kind of talking a little bit about the finances and, you know, the nitty gritty stuff, we're going to be talking about a particular subject, which I have never come across a expert that has got such depth and insight into the world of grief, emotional and mental preparation when it comes to exit.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a great show. So just make sure that you've got your notebook and pen handy, because there's going to be some
or pull
great
over on the side
bombs.
of the road, take notes.
Absolutely. Or what I would highly recommend is always go back, pause, rewind, and you'll probably find yourself immersed into probably going back to re-listen to it. I don't know about you, Jennifer, but when I listen to podcasts, especially things like audiobooks, I always like to go back and re-listen to things because I always find that I miss things. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely.
So,
Definitely.
and
You can tune out unintentionally.
absolutely.
But no one's
Well,
tuning out on us, Adam.
absolutely not. 100%. So anyway, I want to kind of jump in if I may, because it's interesting because I mean, you call yourself an accidental entrepreneur, like you come from the corporate world, don't you? And
I do.
it's really interesting. And you quote unquote, you call consultants in your book like a swarm of locusts with spreadsheets in a nutshell, which is quite funny.
There's a story behind that though. So
I'm sure there is, absolutely. But tell us a little bit more about the backstory around, how did you fall into this industry of M&A? Give us a bit more about from the beginning right through to where we are right today.
How the hell did a lady who worked in advertising and marketing for 25 years join the merger and acquisition ecosystem? I ask myself that a lot. In fact, my TEDx talk is about that implicitly, right? I'm a bit of an exotic bird in the M&A space because I come to it as an executive who went through 3 multi-billion-dollar acquisitions. I've been on all sides of the deal. The most famous deal that I was part of was when Navteq, the digital map maker back in the late 90s and early 2000s. Remember when maps were not everywhere? You could only get them on really high-end cars or a personal navigation device. I don't know what your local store was back then. For us, it was Radio Shack, and it would be like an $800 personal navigation device on the bottom shelf at Radio Shack. So it used to be very high-end. And I had the privilege of introducing maps globally. I was the head of B2B globally when we were acquired by Nokia. And so after that, I won't go into the detail about that, but I left Navteq/Nokia, went to Asurion, which had acquired National Electronic Warranties. And in that case, I inherited a team that had been acquired and leaderless for about a year. And then after that, I went to Apollo Education Group, which was acquired by Apollo Global Management, a large private equity firm. And so I highlight those to say I truly have been on all sides of the deal. And I saw the same patterns with each deal that I was part of. Clearly, my origin story is the Navteq Nokia one, because that's the first acquisition I went through. But by my third one, I thought these issues consistently happen. And the issues were around people. The fact that the culture and the change management aspect of a merger or an acquisition was not dealt with, from my experience and then what I witnessed in each deal. It wasn't dealt enough. It wasn't dealt with enough, satisfactorily enough. And you had some leaders that were okay talking about it, others who didn't talk about the change management, the grief, the loss of identity, all of that. And that's what really compelled me to write the book. I had so many CEOs who I interviewed for the book, over 60, who just consistently kept saying, what are you doing besides the book? This is the stuff that no one talks about, but it dooms the deal. And leaders aren't prepared.
I was going to say, what position did you hold in each, like for each company? Because you went through 3.
Yes.
Was you like senior executive? Is that what you were kind of like higher at the table?
I'll say the best way to describe my role was I wasn't in the room when the deal was made, but I was burdened with the execution. So I led teams. I was head of B2B globally. I was head of the retail marketing team when I went to Asurion. And then actually I was the head again of B2B marketing for Apollo Education Group. We were about to launch a new product for them when the announcement that they were being acquired came out.
And these 60 executives that you mentioned within the book, were they all executives within the 3 acquisitions that you were part of?
No. I
had,
and this is what's fascinating, Adam, to me, and it's why I'm so glad you've invited me on and that you're interested in talking about this, because I had some executives from my own experience, but I had a multitude of executives who, when they found out I was doing this research for the book, they would introduce me. Oh, you need to talk to Joe. He worked at Alcatel, or she worked at Lucent, right? I mean, I had so many wonderful conversations with I would say CEOs, CFOs, CHROs, middle manager, and private equity. Those were largely the groups because I wanted to initially, it was proof of concept. Was it just me that saw these patterns? Is it universal? And that's what came through in each of those interviews were both the transition stages, the personas, how people change, their personality changes when they're afraid and uncertain of the future. So that really was what compelled me to ultimately write the book because it just kept getting reinforced with each interview that it was not exclusive to me, what I had experienced and witnessed.
So I guess another question which came to my mind was like, okay, so you're in these big corporate roles doing your thing as most corporate employees do. Like, I guess, where did that interest really come? I mean, you started identifying these patterns, but what kind of got you kind of moving into kind of Alice in Wonderland's going down the rabbit hole type of, I found that patterns. Oh my God. Like, where did that come from?
It did. You know what? That's a great description because it definitely, I have been told I can go down a rabbit hole, but, I would say the second acquisition experience where I inherited a team that had a leader previously who had left.
Yeah.
And they hadn't had a leader for almost a year. And I had, even when I came in, just get rid of them, right? Like, let's start the whole team anew. And I thought, what are you talking about? Like, we're not going to find this talent. And what I realized by doing one-on-ones with that team is they were great at their job. They simply didn't understand the role that they played within the acquisition. They hadn't had that level of leadership. And so getting them bought in and understanding the role that they played and how they played it was a significant role that I played as a leader. And I had a number of leaders around me say, wow, you really turned them around. And I was like, I wasn't turning them around. It was just doing my job as a leader. And I said, because I've been them. I know exactly how it feels to be acquired and not clear on the future, not clear on your role and wondering, what's going to happen day to day. And so my responsibility at that point was to share with them that I understood where they were coming from. In fact, just a quick story. I did one-on-ones with each of them and I presented, here are my answers to all the questions you asked me during our one-on-ones. But here's the next slide. These are all the questions you didn't ask me, but I have answers to them because I know these are questions you have and none of you asked them, but it's important for me that you know the answer to it. And I had one guy in the room after the meeting said, you know what? Man, I thought you were a witch. Like, how the hell would you know all those things? He said, but as you were presenting, he said, it became clear you've been through this. So you know what it feels like. And it helped me build trust with that team a lot faster. Because one of the things that, Adam, I'm sure you've talked about with other guests is trust can dissolve quickly when you are uncertain. You've got a whole new set of leaders. You aren't sure what the metrics for success are. And it's really important to gain that trust quickly. So I would say it was a long answer to your question, but all of those things are what compelled me. I had enough leaders say, you really need to write a book about this because you seem to know how to do it well.
When was it within those three acquisitions that you found kind of a knack, or you found when you were getting compliments from your fellow peers that said, oh, you've got a real knack for this? Like, when did you find that? When did you have that kind of aha moment, if you like, or when was that?
Well, I think there were signs along the way with each acquisition.
Okay.
The first acquisition, frankly, and this is always hard. It was after I left that I had so many people say, God, I wish you were still here. It's not the same, because, and this, I will qualify, this can be a situation, particularly with multi-billion-dollar deals, right? As someone else said, the bigger the billions, the bigger the bloodbath. And so there can be a lot of, you're just trying to manage and suss things out. And so having a leader who can interpret what's going on, frame it in a way and help translate it so you know where you're going. But I would say even the next two, each time I had enough people say, you really should write a book about this. And Adam, I will say I'm confident they had no idea that I would write a book that would have a Spotify playlist and caricatures of the 10 personas, that there would be illustrations and whatnot. That's the advertising creative side of me that came out, because I thought, who in their right mind is going to read a book about mergers and acquisitions unless they think it's true to life and maybe has a little bit of dark humor?
Yep.
In it?
Absolutely.
That was the motivation.
I guess one thing that kind of springs to my mind, and our theme around today is around that identity shift. You picked up something which was really interesting. You said that you had interviewed 60 executives that have, around this whole kind of identity shift. Within your experience in working with those 3 companies that you helped facilitated, like from the outside, and I never really thought about this, but with every individual, every employee, does everyone go through an identity shift themselves, or is it mainly the people that are making decisions? What are we referring to here?
One, I want to make sure I'm clear. Like in those 3 multi-billion deals that I was a part of, marketing was my role. I've since become a consultant. So I would say I learned on the job because I was marketing. And in marketing, oftentimes you are tasked with culture and brand identity. So I probably picked up on it more because I have that sensitivity naturally. And Adam, what I would say is because I'm half French, I do think my multicultural sensibilities, I've worked in France. I, went back and forth each summer to visit my grandmother. So I already had a sensitivity to culture and how people identify and how you can struggle when you're trying to understand another culture. So I would say my heightened sensitivity contribute. But back to your question, I think the best way to frame it is if you think of grief in general.
Yes.
Everyone grieves differently. And it's important to never judge how someone is grieving. Some people will weep openly. Others will be quiet and keep it all contained inside. Some will, if you look at them, look like they've gotten through it quickly and are fine. And others, you wonder, are they ever going to get through this? And so the same kinds of scenarios can play out. And it's why actually I embraced Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of grief, and I applied it and I reframed it in the world of mergers and acquisitions. What does that look like to get from denial to acceptance? Everyone experiences it. How people get to acceptance and the speed at which they get to acceptance is what's different.
Yeah, love that. Kind of just off the bat here, and obviously you've finished your 3rd acquisition, and then you made this conscious decision to become an entrepreneur.
No, remember, it was accidental.
Right? Sorry, accidental. Sorry, fucking hell. Accidental, sorry. By any chance, did you go through any stage of grief at all within that transitional period?
That's a good question. I definitely went through it with my first acquisition. It's how and it was one of the things I asked each CEO, right? Have you seen this? And that for me was the epiphany, realizing I wasn't the only one that had gone through the stages of grief in my
Tell me about the emotions that you were going through. Like describe to me, put yourself back at that scene of the end of that first acquisition. Like, tell me about the feelings. Tell me about what you were feeling when you first woke up in the morning and when you went to bed.
Oh, wow.
Describe.
It'd be a therapy session, Adam. Well, and it's actually how I was able to write about it so well because I'd experienced it directly. So everyone has denial for a period of time.
Right.
You think, hey, everything's going to kind of stay the same. Not much is going to change, right? We're just going to keep doing what we're going to do.
Yep.
Then you start to see, well, no, actually things are changing. And even if someone has gotten up front and said, nothing is going to change, everything is going to stay the same, which is why I'd counsel and consult so many CEOs and C-suite executives, never say that, because the reality is things have already changed. In fact, even if the deal doesn't go through, it's already changed because now people know you're thinking of doing a deal.
Yeah, and that's true.
So there is always change. Then you can move into anger. And I would say, for me, the way that anger presented itself was being angry that a number of people who I really admired and trusted and valued left the company. Variety of reasons. We won't get into it, but angry that a lot of my advisors, mentors, truly, leaders I had looked up to, left, had a diminished role. Bargaining, that showed up because, and I call it the flip-flop effect, right? Because there's a part of you that's getting closer to going, okay, this is the way it's going to be, but you also want to hold on to the ways that things used to be. So you're trying to figure out, how do I hold on to some of the things? So in my case, I'll say how we were beat.
Yep.
And I'm just using the Nokia Navtech example, but this is, again, not unique to me. Just giving you some examples where we were B2B. So how we wrote press releases were for an enterprise audience, right? Nokia was B2C, very different approach to how they did press releases. So I'm trying to embrace their new process, but at the same time convince them, hey, we're a different audience. We're B2B. We're trying to connect with businesses. It's not a consumer communication. So it's why, and I acknowledge this a lot, particularly with marketing executives when I've been brought in to present to marketing. You're trying to explain how you do what you do at the same time you're doing your job. And so the bargaining piece of it can be exhausting because you're trying to hold on to the old ways while also embracing the new. And then depression, frankly, is, it is what we all know it to be, right? You are getting closer to accepting the fact that things have changed and they're going to continue to change. And the normal that you knew is now gone. So you can spend a time in that period of depression, but you need to get to acceptance. And as I always highlight, acceptance is not like you're skipping down the aisle, glorious and laughing and joyous, but it means that you have accepted the change. And the way I use it to describe, because this sounds even morbid as I'm describing it to you, Adam, the story that I use as an analogy and reference is, I say, think of your worst breakup, a bad breakup.
Yeah.
You go through the stages of grief with a bad breakup. I said, but by the time you get to acceptance, you finally realize, you know what, there's a better partner out there for me. I have to accept that. I have to accept that, yep, I should have seen it. There were things about this relationship that weren't working out. But when you get to acceptance, you can see there's a better partner out there for you. And so I say, think you need to use that same mindset with this. There's opportunity for you in this post-deal, but it won't happen until you get to acceptance.
Where does the emotion of betrayal come in?
Typically, usually I would say anger, because in denial, you're not there yet at the anger stage. And I see this happen a lot with the next level down, right? Senior leadership who've been part of the deal discussions, who will, more often than not, they've been in the room when the deal is made, or they've at least been brought in sooner. But the next level down can feel betrayed, blindsided. Yeah. And it's where I've seen a lot of tension and issues because the trust can dissolve immediately. And maybe, Adam, you've even witnessed or heard stories about this as well, where people say, why wasn't I brought in? Why didn't I know about this? I'm your head of sales, or I'm top whatever. And that can be the moment where they feel betrayed or blindsided.
I think you made some really valid points there. And this is really good for our listeners to, especially for those that are not quite ready to exit, but it's something to prepare for, because we're kind of giving the listeners, if they're not ready to exit right now, they might be 2 to 5 years away. We're kind of giving them, we're preempting, you're giving them this is what you're about to embrace upon, right? Which is what I love about this conversation. You're kind of foreseeing the future, but you've already lived it.
Right. And what I would say is that was what was so critically important about those interviews is these are consistent patterns that happen. That said, because I want, Adam, your listeners to know that this does not mean don't exit. You've got to hold on. What we're talking about here is you play a part in helping your people get to acceptance, framing the opportunities for them and identifying what the future of the company looks like. So even if you are leaving, the more you lean into, this is what this next chapter of the company is going to look like. We have all done this together, and I am so thrilled that we have created this company. Now it's my time. I've taken us to this point, but now the leadership that needs to step in will take this company to the next level. And you all have the opportunity to be part of that. And I think that's where that framing, if that doesn't happen, that's where it can really go sideways.
You're ready to exit, so why haven't you? You may be in business for 15, 20, 25 years of building your business, but the passion is gone. You're done. But one question keeps you stuck. Is the number close enough to walk away without any regret? What can you actually spend? What kind of life does it fund? And will you look back in 5 years wishing you'd stayed in your business? Now, our sponsor, Zentum, works exclusively with founders at this exact moment. They're chartered financial planners who show you exactly what exit really means. Your spending power, your options, even income that you can generate outside the business. They give you the clarity to pull the trigger with confidence or a plan to bridge the gap. Visit zentum.co.uk and find out if it's finally time. That's zentum.co.uk and find out if it's finally time. One thing that you highlighted actually briefly, which was the transitional part. So we know that something's going down, you're going to be acquired or whatever it might be. Like transitions, they don't just change the business, they change the people within the business, which you've very much highlighted there.
Yeah.
But for the founder, for the entrepreneur, for the business owner who just sold their company and they're saying, oh, what's the new story? Because I can imagine they're probably sitting and they're thinking, well, I built this thing. I am this thing.
Yeah.
Now what? Like,
it's been their identity.
Right? It is.
Yeah.
So I guess the question would be is like, what does that new story look like?
Well, the important thing, and by the way, I heard you say, now what? That's why I called my book, Now What? Because that's what happens so often, right? People are like,
there you
now
go.
what? It can happen whether it's the founder wondering what's their next step. In the case of the big M&A deals I was part of, like people are constantly coming into your office to say, oh, guess what? This has changed. And you're like, now what? So It's a very, very commonly used phrase. But for founders, entrepreneurs who are exiting, and what I've seen is it varies. You have serial entrepreneurs where it's routine. They get it.
Yes.
And frankly, the benefit of serial entrepreneurs is that they're clear about it up front. Right? Mm-hmm. People know. Okay, great. Joe is just known for doing this. That said, you have founders who this is the company that they have built. And, you may still have employee number 1 through 20 who are still with you. The important thing is, I can't tell you what you're going to do afterwards, but what is critically important is that you decide what that's going to be before you exit. Yeah. You need to have a clear understanding of the time frame.
Yes.
And what you plan to do afterwards, because and I'm sure you've witnessed this as well, Adam. It is very hard when you've been the driver of your Porsche to then hand your keys to your 16-year-old and sit in the passenger seat, because you will suddenly think you're doing this all wrong. That's not how I would do this. And yet you don't have the keys anymore. And so I often say, whenever I'm asked, I say to founders, set a timeline. And honestly, I say 6 months. Because you've, I'm sure, heard the stories where they had a payout, they had to be there a year, and they couldn't even make it 3 months. So it's really important to be clear on what is it that I plan to do afterwards.
It's really interesting. So I have a lot of conversations with a lot of founders. They're normally pre-exit founders, Jennifer, right? And there's an exercise that I do with all my clients, okay? So these are clients that are basically looking to scale an exit probably in the next 2 to 3 years, right?
Okay.
They fill in what we call a one-page business blueprint. And the last question is, what does the last 3 months look like before you exit the business? It is probably one of the hardest questions that any entrepreneur or founder could ever be asked.
I bet.
Right?
Love the...
The thing is, it's very difficult. Like sometimes, and I'll be, as guilty as charged, is that when you're working in the weeds, especially if you haven't quite mastered stage one of exit in a business, which effectively is the stage one of exit in a business is effectively trying to make sure that the founder or the business owner is not dependent on them. No venture capitalist, private equity firm is going to invest in a business like that. I guess my question would be is what tips and advice would you have for people that have a question like that, thinking, okay, I need to put myself in the future. I want to exit my business. I have the aspirations to want to do that in the next 2 to 3 years. How can I help myself and help me to put myself in a place where, hey, I got 3 months to go. What do I need to do to try to make it a little bit more clearer to myself?
Yeah.
So that helps me to kind of strip it back, reverse engineer, and then proceed forward. Any thoughts?
Well, a couple, and this is where often I end up talking about legacy, right? What is the legacy
Love
that
that
you
word.
want to leave?
Yeah.
And do you want to upset that legacy because you're having a hard time letting go? And
Yep.
so what people remember of you is not the legacy you built, but the chaos or the disruption that you caused because you're having a hard time letting go. So I think when you frame it, by framing it that way, it really can help that founder who has poured himself into it to see, is this the legacy you want to leave? Do everything you can to preserve that legacy, because now that legacy is going to move forward. It's going to evolve, and you can have the joy of seeing how it evolves. The other thing that I talk about is what's best for your customer. You have built this company because your customer has been your North Star. And clearly you're choosing this next stage of your company's journey because you felt it was the right thing for the company, not just about your legacy, the right thing for the company as it related to the customers you serve. And I find when you frame it that way, it can take some of the emotion out of it, but still be true to what people appreciate and understand. Yes, I built this company because I knew these customers needed to be served, and I am pursuing this deal because it will better serve those customers. And I am thrilled that the company I built will continue to serve them in that way. So to me, that's a critical piece of it. You know, there's always going to be the selfish person who doesn't care.
Of course.
But for the most part, I have found founders, particularly when they've poured their life into a company, that makes sense to them.
Yeah. Is there any
I would love to hear what would be
clients?
your answer. Like, I would love to know, Adam, how because I think it's brilliant that you asked that question.
Well, the thing is, so I'm a big fan of the word legacy. So I rave on about that. But the other second big word that I rave on about is impact, because it's kind of like, what is the impact that we want to create after we've exited the business? What does that really look like? And one of the things that I talk about, is it philanthropy? Is it going into another vertical? Is it doing like what does that look like? So I'm really kind of like trying to tap into, and again,
that's going to be my answer in the future. I love that, adding on the importance.
You like that, right?
Yeah. I'll attribute it to you. Fear not.
I appreciate that. I think with a lot of conversations that I have with a lot of people is that they find it particularly difficult to put themselves in the future, because we know that working with CEOs, they're like the visionaries of the company, right? They don't work in the day-to-day, right? That's why they have a team to deal with all the firefighting shit, right?
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to be able to switch that identity from a founder business owner to, okay, I'm now a CEO of a company. I'm future thinking. I'm a visionary. And it's very difficult. I guess my question to you would be, is there any exercises that come to mind to make that easier, to help if we wanted to create that last 3 months of our exit plan or whatever it is? Are there any practical exercises that spring to mind that maybe you've helped with some of your clients? I remember back in the day when I was an elite athlete, and there was one practical exercise that I used to do again, it's a little bit different in terms of context because I'm not exiting from athletics, but I would say that visualization played a very important part of achievement. I don't know if that particularly works well in this case, but is there anything that kind of springs to mind in
you
your
stole
case?
my answer. It was going to be visual.
Oh, shit. Damn it.
But that's a good,
Damn it.
that's a good thing because it is, the reality is, and I think your listeners who are entrepreneurs won't mind the comparison to elite athletes. But visualization is critically important because it is very hard for an entrepreneur who has been so much about this business to think about, okay, what am I beyond that? So when you say visualize yourself a year from now, what are you doing? Where are you exactly? And you can do that for even 5 years from now. But I find even a year from now, and I suspect, Adam, that you've probably had clients who will say, you know what, I don't want to build a whole new business again, but I want to take all the knowledge that I have here and help others. But if you visualize, maybe you're a consultant. Maybe you are on a board helping other companies. Maybe you're a mentor to entrepreneurs. Like there's a lot of variety. What I found is just helping give people ideas about what that could be. Because as you said, when you're a founder entrepreneur, you've been heads down building this business. You might even not know or realize how transferable your skills are. What I can say, though, I have rarely met an entrepreneur who said, oh, yeah, I just plan to golf and cruise the world, right? that I think that lasts maybe about a month if they do it.
So true.
More often than not, the visualization helps them identify where do I want to be? And depending on the age, too, right? I've had founders who've said, I just want to spend time with my grandkids. I've poured my heart into this company. I've set the company up well. My employees are well set. It's now time for me to go.
Yep. Love that. Here's a thing that kind of sprung to my mind is when I think about business owners, they get a little bit blindsided when it comes to, they prepare their financial exit, right? Mm-hmm. They prepare for the legalities and things like that. But what they don't really prepare is like the emotional exit.
Right.
When it comes to, say, for example, we're 6 months away before kind of the big day, are there any practical exercises that we can help our founders or our listeners on the emotional and mental preparation side of stuff 6 months from exit in their business? Any thoughts?
I'd say listen to this podcast.
There you go. Exactly. 100%.
Well, because one thing, and again, it's why I love that you invited me on, because this is not the stuff that people talk about. But to me, forewarned is forearmed. And so having visibility, because what I have seen happens is if a founder isn't prepared for the emotional side, they can feel blindsided, which is why I'm out on the podcast circuit, right? Just highlighting this is an aspect of that. You're not going crazy. You are not alone. This emotional journey is understandable because you have built a business. You have been part of building a business, right? Because you probably have listeners who may not be the founder, but have been part of building that business together. And so you're all going to have emotions around that. There's nothing wrong with those emotions. And the goal for you is to, one, get to acceptance and have a plan for what you're going to do afterwards. And that really is such a critical piece. And listening to podcasts like this, right, that just help you prepare. But really, I would say the first box that you're checking is, meaning those emotions that I felt, that wasn't just me. This is common. I can tell you the times that I do sessions, particularly with, when it's rooms of entrepreneurs and we're talking about this, I can see them actually looking at each other to go, oh, really? Like that's common? So I think it just helps. It helps make that a reality so that people don't feel they're going crazy.
Yeah, that's good. When we talked about identity shifts, we've spoken about identity shifts quite a lot so far. Now, my thought process is like, how does one rebuild an identity when the company was like the primary focus. Do you see what I mean?
Yep.
It's such a hard separation, isn't it?
It is.
Any tips or advice for those that are kind of stuck, trying to think to themselves? It's a little bit like when someone's been in the armed forces for a long period of time and they can't make that separation between personal life and armed forces life. I guess it's a very similar situation. And I'm sure that you've had a lot of clients that have come to you for that, but how do they rebuild that identity without kind of that core focus of the company?
Well, and it's funny. It made me realize I didn't really answer your question well that you asked me earlier, because you asked, did you go through stages of grief when you transitioned from corporate to entrepreneur? And I said, good question. And then I don't think I intentionally skirted it. I just realized, I didn't really properly answer that question.
No, but I kind of reworded it and came back. That's what I did,
you're
right?
such a clever interviewer. So yeah, I did. And I didn't realize that I was going through it, because the bargaining piece of it, I will tell you, I was writing the book, but I was still interviewing to be a chief marketing officer. I hadn't let go of that. I honestly, naively thought, well, I'll just write this book, publisher will pick it up and it'll be out in the world to help people. And I am just thankful that a number of CEOs who I interviewed, I mentioned before, just kept saying, this book is critical and very insightful, but people aren't going to be running to Barnes and Noble or whatever. What's your local book? Waterstones. Okay. They're not going to be running to Waterstones because they're going to be too busy trying to, do their job. So you need to build a business around it. So I absolutely went through those stages. And what I would say is, and again, I think I mentioned this earlier, it was the crux of my TEDx talk. Find the gap. For me, the gap in what I address now in mergers and acquisitions, I not only found the gap, but I did the research. CEOs confirmed, yes, this is a gap. Leadership through mergers and acquisitions, nobody really talks about that. People don't know what to expect, and they kind of hope for the best. I found that gap, and I felt that my skill set, having been in marketing and communications, because that's such a big part of it, right? The culture, the identity, how you talk about it had been my past role. I translated that into what I do now. And so I can speak to it frankly, because I've lived it. I've been on all sides of it. And by being the M&A Whisperer, I can say, here's what's going to happen. This is what's driving people's behavior. And here's what you need to do as CEO, founder, leader. You don't need to hope. You can actually have a strategy around how you help people through this. And so that was my transferable skill. I say the same to anyone who's been in corporate and looking. I was said, look for the gap that you solve for. And by the way, hang on, let me just one more thing that people will pay for. Because I got to tell you, that's been probably one of the trickiest parts is people will actually acknowledge, oh my gosh, what you talk about is so crucial in mergers and acquisitions, but there's still a lot of people who are happy with status quo or just hope for the best.
So true. You're absolutely bang on the money. And that is a big lesson to be learned, especially when you're a business owner, trying to grow a business as well. So absolutely, I think you're bang on the money. One of the things that kind of sprung to my mind actually was, I guess this kind of question was, who am I if I don't have without my business life?
Yeah.
That's a really kind of a question that really haunts and strikes into the hearts of all founders and business owners because they've been so glued to their business. Break it down for us. Like, what are the layers of identity they need to examine for themselves? What would you say the process looks like for rebuilding step by step? Because there must be like some layers that they need to kind of overcome, a little bit like an onion when you peel it back. What do those layers look like? What's the process for trying to make that transitional period like?
Well, it's a hard question to answer because it's going to be different for everyone.
Exactly. Very subjective. I agree.
But what I can say, and I would love to hear your thoughts because I suspect you've coached a lot of entrepreneurs through this as well. You can identify that you are this title, you are this company. but what you are is what you bring to the situation, the knowledge, the expertise, the skills. And so framing it from that standpoint, right? In fact, actually, I will say we're going through a lot of layoffs in the United States right now. And I've been,
it's happening everywhere.
Yes, this is unfortunately true. And I have a lot of friends in advertising. And I'll say, remember, you are not the agency you were at before. What you are is the creative ideator who delivered XYZ results for this company, through this campaign, through this idea. So go back to what your skills are, what you bring to a situation, and frame it in a way that shows, by me doing this, these skills led to this result. And so, and it goes back to the beginning of our conversation. It may still take people some time through those stages of grief to be able to have that honest conversation with themselves, and don't judge that. Right. But that's why I just say, the sooner you start thinking about, I need to get to acceptance. What does that look like? And how do I need to think about my future once I get there, can help you feel disciplined that you're moving forward. You're moving forward towards something, and that you control what that narrative is.
Absolutely. Going back to our conversation, it's really interesting. When I ask the question to a lot of founders and business owners that come to me, and they're like, hey, so I'm thinking about exiting my business. And if I ask that same question to 100 people, I can guarantee you that not one single one of them will have exactly the same answer.
Yeah.
They're all different.
Right.
And so I think you make a really valid point. And I feel like a lot of people are trying to create shortcuts, and they're trying to look for this secret formula. And I don't think there really is one, because, again, it's all based on circumstances.
Absolutely. It's why and I say this a lot, because I've coached, or I should say consulted with CEOs who say, well, we've acquired XYZ number of companies. And I'll say, well, that's great, but this is a different company. Each deal is different. Now, you can absolutely templatize certain aspects of it. It's why, and I'll even bring it up myself, it's why I said, it's like swarms of locusts with PowerPoint spreadsheets and Excel templates, because their risk of that is that you think, okay, well, everyone can fit in a box, and this is how this goes. And we just, follow these steps, check this list, and then we move to the next stage. And if your mindset is that way, then you don't take in new information. You don't, like I like to say, because I used to work in navigation, you don't recalibrate, you don't recalculate, and you have to, because new data, this is a different deal. New data, different people. So if you're obsessed with just getting through the checklist, you aren't picking up on those crucial data points that say, okay, well, we need to pivot in this direction because of XYZ that's happening. You need to be looking out for those and not just focused on getting through a checklist.
Yeah. Love that. Some good stuff. For you guys that are listening, first of all, I hope you're enjoying mine and Jennifer's conversations.
Oh, we know they are, Adam. They've got to be. I know they
100%.
pulled over to the side of the road. They're so into it.
See, this is not just entertaining. It's obviously educational as well, which we like best. But what I love to do now is we're going to move now into one of my favorite parts of our conversation, which is what I call the coaching part. So I am the guinea pig, of course. I love being guinea pigs. And our beautiful guest today is going to be the therapist stroke coach consultant, whatever it is. But I want to stick to the topic of grief, because I think it's a very important topic that's not spoken about enough. And it's kind of addressing the elephant in the room when it comes to the whole kind of M&A exit piece and things like that. But how should we move forward with this? I'm thinking to myself, we can act as a guinea pig. Okay,
how about this? I'll describe a scenario and you tell me if this matches and if you can replace. And I don't want to think of you as just a guinea pig. How about we're going to think of you as a middle manager, right? Or a leader. Okay. We're going to make you a
leader. Leader's good. I like that. I like that title better.
Frontline.
Makes me feel important.
Leader.
Yep.
Okay. And
okay.
You are faced with a scenario where you have, let's say you've got 15 people on your team.
Yep.
And an announcement is made that the company is going to be acquired. And you're being told this, and obviously, as always happens, and we need to hit these numbers by X kind of date, but you're just trying to assess, okay, how do I get people on board? And as you've gone, you're a couple months in, right, this post deal, you start to realize, I've got people who've been excited about this. Like, they were pretty excited about the news from the moment I shared it. So
Yeah.
there's that one group. Then you have fence sitters, I call them, right? People who are just trying to see how things are going to play out. And then you have people who are still stuck in denial. And so, hey, guinea pig / frontline leader, what's the first thought that comes to mind for you? You see this happening. What are you thinking about as a leader? What are questions that you might have?
One of the feelings that I would have, certainly from my perspective, is the feeling, do I have the bandwidth to be able to, what's the word I was looking for? To be able to deal with my own emotions, as well as to try to support others that might be going through their own emotions, because we're all reacting in different ways. Some people are reacting in, oh shit, like, there's this fear of insecurity. There's other people feeling excited. And so I just kind of feel like I don't know how I'm going to cope as an individual.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I'm feeling right now. And that again, it's because we're all kind of trying to busy getting things done. But again, there will be points in the day where I sit back and reflect and think, holy crap, like things are going so fast. We're getting and it's like, wow. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's going so fast, and I'm not used to it. So that's kind of like my first thoughts.
And a couple of thoughts come to mind. And because you've been such a caring and compassionate leader, Adam, I suspect for you feel like I've got to do this all by myself. I've got to help navigate the team through that.
Yep.
And here's where we'll bring up Morag, right? Our mutual wonderful friend. Having allies, you have allies in this moment. It's the people in the group who are already excited about the change. Talking, engaging them to say, listen, I need, because they'll be aware that not everyone on the team is as enthusiastic as they are. So saying you are my role models for embracing the change, for demonstrating that. And I really would I would really appreciate your additional support, not only to role model that, but to help bring others along, show them, describe to them, share with them why you're excited. Because I've seen this play out in real time, and it's always fascinating to me. It's often the colleagues in the group who, by extending a hand outward to say to one of their colleagues who may be a fence sitter or stuck in denial, you've been such a great contributor. I know you'll be a super contributor to this moving forward because you're so good with numbers, or you're so good at analyzing data and simplifying it, communicating it. So one, know that you are not alone to do this. Pull in the people who have already embraced the change to role model that behavior for others who might be fence sitters or stuck in denial.
Yeah.
The other aspect of this, though, because you highlight an important thing, right? It's exhausting because you've got your day job, the job you were hired for, and then now you've got a whole additional job that's very emotional, for which you feel like you're not well equipped. And it's why actually I use that example of the story I told with the one team where I presented to them, here's all the questions that you asked me during our one-on-ones, and here are my answers to those. Here are the questions that you didn't ask that I want to make sure you have answers to. And the third piece that I didn't get into when I shared that story is I need you all to continue to ladder up to me the questions you still have that I haven't answered so that I get you the answers you need in order to move forward. That feedback loop, because you want people bringing you that information, and people can feel reticent because they're still trying to figure out what's going on. But if you've got your allies role modeling the benefit and the opportunity, and you show up as someone who's open and engaged, and I say, I wouldn't necessarily do this in an open forum, but going and asking certain people who you know, it seems to you that they're not working at the way that they have been before, and having that one-on-one to say, what are your questions? What are your concerns? I say with an ostrich, right? That's my persona in the book, that person who's stuck in denial. I'll say, you have such great gifts to give. Consider the consequences of not giving your skill set to the future of this company. What does that look like for you, right? And often they'll say, well, that's, I want to be part of this company moving forward. So the more that you have that one-on-one dialogue with those people in particular who you've identified that are struggling. And again, you cannot bend over backwards for every single employee. There will always be those people who are in the back of the room, arms crossed. I say it's the people in the middle who you focus on to help those fence sitters, because the benefit is once you get one of those fence sitters to go, you know what? I think this is a good thing. I think this is great for the company. Then you say, I need you to be trumpeting that message to everyone else. You've got another new role model, and they can even be more influential because people saw, oh, they weren't thrilled about this at the beginning either, but now they are excited. So what do they know? So again, it's finding your allies who can role model that behavior and being very open with what you know and what you don't know, and soliciting the questions, opening up, making it a safe environment for people to challenge and ask questions.
I like that. I think that's a really good, that's given me a good set of tools from my arsenal, if you want to call it that. So the other thought process that came through my mind as you were talking is a lot of our listeners are, well, you've already kind of highlighted, whether it be a leader, a decision maker, CEO, founder, that kind of person. Now, I want to put myself in that role right now because I feel being a founder or a CEO, it's lonely at the top. It is lonely at the top, and sometimes it can feel lonely at the top, especially if we're going through something which is completely alien.
Yes.
It's completely new. This is a new thing to me.
Yeah.
And I'm going into what I call uncharted territory.
Yes. Yep.
It is a new set of emotions that I rarely have had to deal with being a founder or a CEO. I'm not a mind reader. I get this kind of sense of uneasiness with people around me, even though I know that they are trying to, there are certain people that champion people.
Yeah.
But then, as you highlighted, there are people that are just sitting on the fence that are just kind of like just waiting to see what's happening around them because, again, it's new and uncharted territory.
Yes.
Is there any tips that you have for me?
Yes. So actually a scenario comes to mind. So one of the exercises I do to help groups through the stages of grief, I use music. So I joked with you that, right, I talk about a bad breakup. And so I laugh with the audience, or I should say I laugh at myself, and sometimes the audience laughs with me. I'll say, you know what? This reminded me of bad breakup. And I come from an era where you used to have mixtapes. And so I had, for my breakup, certain songs that helped me get through I didn't realize they were the stages of grief, right? So I had a little bit of Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, Frank Sinatra, Anita Baker, and the Rolling Stones. And so we're going to do the same. We're going to create our playlist. I said, it's not going to, and there's 36 songs. There's a playlist attached to my book. But I said, in the moment, you're going to create your own playlist. You're going to pick a song that best describes how you felt when you first heard the news. Pick a song that best describes how you feel right now. And pick a song that best describes how you want to feel 90 days from now.
I love
And what I would say is some of the most profound moments that I've witnessed are when CEOs share their music list. When they share, right? I saw one that comes to mind in particular, right? His song, I think, was Yesterday for, the news, how he felt when he first heard the news. The song for how he feels right now, which was the Rolling Stones, Can't Always Get What You Want, You Get What You Need.
Love that. Love that.
For the future, it was Can't Stop Believing. And so, but what was great about that is it showed in a vulnerable way, but not a, oh my gosh, I'm giving up too much information. But just the selection of his songs and the fact that he was willing to share that had other people then sharing their playlist. I would say, Adam, I've been shocked at how well received that exercise, because it's not easy to talk about grief, but people
No, it isn't.
look at it in a different way because I'm using music to give people a safety net to talk about it. Again,
Yes.
it's like, oh, I feel that, like Miley Cyrus's Wrecking Ball, take this job and shove it. Like there's all kinds of funny songs that come out that you might not normally say, but because you're quoting, your playlist, it can be profound. So what I say to CEOs is when you are open in those town halls, that you aren't just going off your frequently asked questions, your stock answers to that, but you solicit those questions and you don't cower when someone asks you a challenging question. Because people
Love
need
that.
to see that a challenging question will be addressed. And it is okay to say, I don't have the answer to that just yet, but I will get that answer. And I will make sure that you, Sam in the audience, that you have it. Because when people see, oh, Sam asked that question and the CEO took it on, and she's now going to go and make sure she gets an answer to it, it just demonstrates, oh, this is where, it helps build that trust back up, particularly because we've talked a few times about how people can feel blindsided. How you show up, how you let people ask you questions, your vulnerability in that moment. Because I think, unfortunately, vulnerability has been hijacked. It's been, now it's like people think, oh, I've got to weep in front of them. No, that is not what vulnerability is. It is acknowledging, I've gone through my own series of emotions, but I'm excited about this opportunity, and I think it's going to be great for the company.
Yeah, love that. Listen, I think we could talk about this all night, but I know for our listeners,
Clearly
they don't have all night to talk. We could, right? But first and foremost, this has been a fascinating conversation, really great conversation. And for you guys that are listening, I hope that you have, first of all, been taking lots of notes. We've gone through a lot of great practical exercises, thought processes, insights. It's been like a whole gold mine of just some great golden nuggets that you can go away with. And this has been fantastic. I guess my last question to you, Jennifer, is with the fascinating case study that you did with the 60 CEOs, for example, where are you hoping to extend that research to? Where are you hoping that's going to take you to it? Are you looking to do more research studies? Are you looking to, where is this going in terms of journey-wise?
Yeah. I'm actually in the process of doing more research with a colleague around the idea of integration debt, which is the debt that a company accumulates as compounding debt when you don't make decisions that you need to at the beginning. You delay decisions, or you make bad decisions and don't course correct, even though you should, or you take shortcuts, right? And what's been fascinating is the consistency. And frankly, as we talk about integration debt, the number of CEOs who say, before I've even explained it, oh, yep, I know what that is. That's when we actually didn't pay attention to the people stuff. But it's not just people, right? It's about not aligning your leadership quickly, right? It's about not having a strategy where you not only retain your customers while you're also growing, right? Because you've probably seen those situations where they get so focused, oh, this deal is now going to help us grow because we've got all new customers we can get. Yeah, but you can't abandon the ones you have. So it's all the levels that companies can, I don't want to say intentionally overlook, but it's just like, oh, well, we'll get to that. And so you accumulate integration debt over time. So that's what I'm working on. Very excited by what we're finding with it, because I think the terminology of integration debt is in a language that CEOs can understand and appreciate. And my colleague and I have solutions for here's how you mitigate the buildup of integration debt.
Yeah. How does that work for, say, a small business, or does it not?
Well, that's what's interesting. Even a small business. Now, very small, not, the compounding effect isn't as big. Obviously, the bigger the business, the greater the potential for debt. But what we're seeing in the research is that it can happen in any size company.
Interesting. Love that. Some very good stuff. Anyway, listen, guys, this has been a fascinating conversation. So first of all, Jennifer, this has been a great conversation. We've had a lot of fun as well.
We have
had a lot of fun. And for you guys that are listening in, by the way, first of all, make sure that you head over to all your good book record stores or whatever it is. If it's Barnes and Noble or Waterstones or Amazon, whatever it is, make sure you go check out Jennifer's book and also her TED Talk, which is over on YouTube, of course, which you can go check it out on. And also, if you want to connect with her, I would highly endorse you do around this whole ideology on grief, on identity shifts. Please mention the podcast if you do reach out to her on LinkedIn, or follow her more specifically on LinkedIn and other social media channels as well. So anyway, from me and Jennifer, thanks so much for listening into today's podcast. And hopefully we'll see you again soon. Take care. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Been out here all morning. Not a single bite. Guess the fish finally figured it out. Just like hackers do when Cisco Duo's on guard. With Duo's end-to-end phishing resistance, every login, every device, every user stays protected. No hooks, no catches, no bites. Cisco Duo. Phishing season is over. Learn more at duo.com.